And then now I want to bring Natalie back up to the stage. We didn't get a chance to read her formal bio, so I'd be amiss not to do it now. But Natalie, in addition to being the state president for Colorado Association of Realtors this year, is a dedicated realtor, national speaker, and business success coach committed to inspiring real estate professionals and organizations to become intentional industry thought leaders. Natalie is a realtor with the Evolution Group, powered by Keller Williams, downtown Denver, and she is the current president. Oh, I've already said that part. I'll skip it. Her past leadership roles include NAR, Member Services Liaison, 2016 Chair and Interim CEO for the Fort Collins Board of Realtors, and Director at the local, state, and national level. Please welcome back up Natalie.
Thank you, thank you. All right, this is it, the home stretch. You guys did it. So great conference so far? Perfect, perfect. Well, my plan is to talk to you a little bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And more importantly, belonging. And I'm not sure if this is an area that a lot of your associations are already working on, but what I'm thinking of in terms of going from words, like in theory, we want to be an inclusive association. And what often happens is that we find that our actions don't align with what we think we're doing or how we think we're showing up. So I'm gonna give us 5 tips to go over today, just to do a little quick check-in, because when I do my work with real estate agents, it really comes down to them and where they are and what they're working on, because in theory, anything is possible, but until we start to apply it, we're not gonna continue to see the effects. Does that sound like a plan? Great. It is interactive, so be prepared to share with your neighbor. I will try not to volunteer anyone in this room unless I recognize you, then I might call on you. And then a couple of housekeeping rules. When we are entering into the space of discussion on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, something that I like to just do is set groundwork in terms of the conversation where we are. A couple of agreements that I'd like us to make collectively together is knowing that I am going to give you some hands-on tools, resources that you can actually take back to the office and apply today. So you will have some takeaways. I also want to make sure that we have a little bit of fun, because as I shared in the panel discussion, I am a power and a party personality. You'll see that I'm very animated, so probably a party and then a power personality. So we're gonna have a little bit of fun, but I also wanna make sure that we have a safe space. So as we're going into the discussion on diversity, equity, inclusion, that we enter into the conversation from a place of curiosity, right? When we have curiosity, and I mean curiosity to the degree of a 5-year-old that wants to know why, and respect. You couple those together, I have found the most magical and beautiful conversations that are able to take place. Does that sound like a plan for everyone? Everyone okay with those ground rules? All right, perfect. You heard my bio, so I'm not going to tell you anything more about who I am, but I would like to tell you the 5 steps that I'm going to talk about today. And as you can see on the screen, it starts with you. I've already acknowledged that you all have one of the heavier lifts for the association in terms of messaging, communication, branding that goes out to the membership. And for those that wear multiple hats in terms of education, that's an additional added bonus, so thank you for doing that. For our 5 steps today that I want to focus on, organizational growth through diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I also want to talk about establishing awareness. And that's going beyond the discussion of diversity, equity, and inclusion as a hot topic or a nice to have or it's trending. It's going to be awareness not just for your membership, but for the staff and for your volunteer leaders within your association. Also cultivating an inclusive culture. So we know that when we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's not an item or a checklist item that we want to have in how we're operating, but it's the culture and how we're showing up. From the national level, the National Association of Realtors has done a great job in terms of setting or leading the charge for us in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, in terms of the actions that have been taken over the last couple of years, the tools and resources that are available and at our disposal. So we'll talk about that as well. Fostering inclusive leadership. And what does that look like? How does that fall on your laps from a communication standpoint? And last but not least, the strength in inclusive messaging and branding is how we'll wrap it up. So, I saw someone taking a photo. We will share the slides, and I will also share my contact information. I am happy with you taking a picture of any of the slides, whatever you want to share with your membership, include in your newsletter, rebrand, repurpose, make it your own, please do. I won't be offended. So the first thing I want to talk about is organizational growth through diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. When we look at organizational growth, I want us to look at 3 key areas. One is the aligned organizational values, the policy and procedures, and then opportunities. I did a little fast click. Opportunities and membership engagement. This is the foundation for the association. When we're looking at growing diversity, equity, inclusion, and that sense of belonging for our membership and for the staff, we want to make sure that our organizational values are aligned. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and looking at our organizational values, our strategic planning, and our goal setting on an annual basis. And then our policies and procedures. How are we operating? Have they been updated recently? And then creating those opportunities for membership engagement. On the screen, you have NAR's Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Strategic Plan for 2023. I think this is a great example for all associations, state and local, to take a look at diversity, equity, and inclusion from the standpoint of how the organization is going to operate and achieve goals and growth throughout the upcoming years. When you look at this screen, when you're looking at the leadership development and how they're going to identify new and up and coming leaders, making sure that we're honoring and respecting the volunteers that are moving forward. This chart itself is a statement that says the values of diversity, equity, and inclusion are important to the association in all key pillars of how the organization operates, not a single standalone. If you have diversity, equity, and inclusion as a single standalone in terms of your strategic planning or your focus areas, that's completely fine. But what I want to challenge you to do over the coming years and making recommendations to your incoming leadership is looking at opportunities to intertwine diversity, equity, inclusion, and creating that sense of belonging in every area, every service that you provide, all of the values that you provide to your membership. The next piece is in your policies and procedures. So looking at your policies and procedures, there are a couple of things that I'd strongly invite you to take a look at. And that's conducting a diversity, equity, and inclusion policy and procedure audit. Has anyone conducted a DEI audit? Okay, we have Austin that has done. Okay, a couple of hands, perfect. Those that are interested in conducting a DEI audit? Beautiful, we'll talk about that. Here's what you want to do. When you're looking at your diversity, equity, and inclusion audit for your policies and your procedures, I like to say the best thing that will keep you out of hot water is procedures and processes. And I say this to practitioners, and I say it also for the association. And when we're talking about processes, this is the hiring process for all staff members that are coming in. If you have an assistant that's coming in, application process for your volunteers to get involved and to serve. Is it a single streamlined process that every individual goes through in order to become engaged with the membership? You want to make sure that if you don't have a process in place, that you create one. And if you don't have one in place, you can connect with the people at your table and connect through your Facebook page to see if there's one that exists. You also want to look at your policies, procedures, and bylaws to make sure that it has inclusive language when you're reviewing that. So maybe gender-neutral terminology when you're identifying individuals within the organization that are serving in a volunteer capacity. For the Colorado Association of Realtors a few years back, our bylaws still read the chairman of the board. So we've gone in to change that to the chairperson, right? Or the chair of the board. So removing that identifier. That's when you're looking at a true audit. It's your policies, your procedures. The big piece as well in that is your communication policy that you have in place. What does your social media campaign look like? Or what is the expectation for the association's social media and online presence? What is that supposed to look like? And really making sure that it's inclusive and creates that sense of belonging. Establishing a DEI policy framework. So I started off by sharing NAR's DEI strat plan for 23, I believe it's 23 through 25 if I'm not mistaken. Is there DEI elements and components that are tied into your strategic plan for the next couple of years? If you do a 3, 5, or 10-year strategic plan, what does that look like? Is your incoming leadership team exploring diversity, equity, and inclusion from a goal-setting standpoint? And what does that look like? And you want to make sure that there's additional training that goes into that. So when we're looking at equity considerations, does your leadership have the training that they need to make these decisions and to create these processes? And when I say this, it goes beyond the at-home with diversity training, the Fairhaven course, the bias override course. We're looking at the leadership of the organization to truly set the trajectory in terms of where the association is going, in terms of incorporating diversity, equity, inclusion, and creating a belonging culture. So how do we equip them with the tools that they need so that they have the competency level to set those goals and those plans for the association moving forward? I've talked a little bit about inclusive language. That appears in the branding that's going out. It appears in the messaging, branding and messaging that goes out. It appears in the communication and dialogue that happens within your leadership and at events similar to this or conferences that you host at your association. Providing diversity, equity, and inclusion, bless you, providing diversity, equity, and inclusion training and education. So I spoke a little bit about making sure that your leadership is equipped with the tools that they need to do the goal setting and the planning. This also includes the training that you're offering to your membership. So when we're looking at the At Home with Diversity course, when we're looking at the implicit bias training, when we're looking at AI meets fair housing compliance, I think those are a couple of offerings that are out there. What is it that you're giving your agents, the members of the association, so that they can be successful? And the same is true for your broker owners. What does a brokerage need to know in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, and creating a sense of belonging? As you're thinking about ideas and value that you can provide to your broker owners for the association, creating a broker owner toolkit around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Broker owners also need to have those same processes that I mentioned. If you have processes and procedures that are in place in terms of hiring on or bringing on a new agent, making sure that they have an understanding that they should follow a protocol to help keep them out of hot water, not just from the standpoint of risk mitigation, but from the standpoint of creating a culture within the industry in your communities that you serve to make sure that individuals feel welcome to the industry, right? We know that a ton of research has been done that individuals don't feel completely welcome to become a practitioner. If you're not aware of that, that's out there, right? It seems like this illustrious far-off thing that is only available to certain individuals. So how can we create an even playing field or those equitable opportunities for the individuals that we serve? And then last but not least, evaluate the programs and the services and offerings that you currently have in place. Just doing a quick assessment in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. For a long time, there was a local association, and probably many local associations, that at the end of the year, they would have a holiday party. And it was entitled a holiday party that had a Christmas tree and Christmas decorations and everything surrounded the Christmas holiday only. Take a look at that. Are you saying holiday party, the words, but the actions are actually, it's a Christmas party, but we're going to pretend that it's a holiday party so that it feels inclusive? Just in words alone, right? So making sure you take that extra step in terms of the actions that we're taking. The last piece that we look at when we're looking at that organizational foundation is the opportunities and membership engagement. So this is creating opportunities for our members. I am fortunate enough to have the chance to speak to many associations and brokerages across the country around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I hear things on both ends of the spectrum. There are individuals in certain communities that feel we have a strong DEI program that's up and running, or we're focused on that, and that's intention that we have that we're going to focus on in the upcoming years, and they're doing the work, and they want to see improvement and growth in that area. And then I also have conversations with individuals that say, well, you know, diversity is not really an issue in our community. We really don't experience that. Anyone heard either of those two extremes? Yeah, and there's a lot of in between, right? There's a lot of scale in between. So what I want to do, I think it's always important for staff and volunteers to understand what is the messaging going to be when you have this conversation, because this is the conversation that provides the most space for growth, right? If diversity is not really an issue, it's not something we have to deal with in our community, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to grow there. So how do we talk about it? So this is where you all are going to have an exercise. I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and at your tables, I want you to work together. If you could just designate one scribe to take notes, and in 5 minutes, all I want you to do, as quickly as you can, is identify all of the differences that the individuals at that table have. So every difference that you can identify in 5 minutes, and then we'll come back after 5 minutes. Everybody got it? One scribe, all of the, if you're solo, find a group to connect with. And the time starts now. Right, you have about 3 minutes, and if I didn't say this before, it is a competition. There we go. All right. So whoever was the designated scribe, what I'd like you to do is just tally up the number of differences you were able to identify in that short 5 minutes. And then yes, thank you. I will need a couple of runners. All right, everyone have their numbers? Anyone need more time? You need a little bit more time? Okay. More time for differences? Are you asking for bonus time? There's no bonus time. Listen, I knew as soon as I said it's a competition, it's like light bulbs start to go off. It's like, oh, we're competing? I love it. Okay, so who in the room has 5 or more differences on your list? Keep your hands up. 10 or more. 15 or more, 20 or more, 22, oh, well, that's 22 or more, 25 or more, 30 or more. Okay, these are our 2 tables. Let's get a microphone to these 2 tables. Beautiful, thank you. A round of applause. Congrats to everyone. Okay, your designated speaker doesn't have to be your designated scribe if you so choose, because, you know, it's survival. Vote someone else in. We'll start at this table here. Whoever the designated speaker is, tell us who you are, where you're from, and then if you could list your differences for us.
Okay, I'm Jess Price from Metro Texas Association of Realtors in DFW area, and it's a long list, so bear with me.
Perfect.
Gender, age, eye color, facial hair, height, build, personality, style, sexual orientation, educational background, family background, hobbies, likes, family status and children, professional roles, states we've lived in, states we're from, states we've traveled through, shoe size, resources available, privileges, economic backgrounds, allergies, medical and health, mental health, politics, religion, skills and abilities, goals and ambitions, pets, body modifications, coffee, tea, or none of the above, dietary, and glasses, contacts, etc.
Beautiful. Round of applause. Thank you. Impressive. All right, designated person at this table.
Hi, my name is Mason Chappell. I'm the marketing manager with the Sacramento Association of Realtors. Here we go. Men, women, military background, black, white, Hispanic, no kids, gay relationship, straight relationship, curly hair, straight hair, brown eyes, blue eyes, green eyes, kids, no kids, East Coast, West Coast, pets, no pets, married, single. I mean, I'm engaged, but technically in the eyes of the law, I'm single.
Okay, that is a very specific.
Team of one. Not a team of one. Age, different siblings, youngest, oldest, blended family, deceased parents, stepbrothers, male CEO, black CEO, woman CEO.
Beautiful. Round of applause. Thank you. I could not have planned this to be any better. So do you see in identifying the differences, we have, and what was your total number here? 30? 35? 31, fabulous. Okay, you're both winners, so we're gonna say that. But being able to identify 35 differences, right? And we started out with, diversity is not really something that we deal with within our community. In 5 minutes, you were able to identify at least 35, plus all of the additional differentiators that are in this room. There are differences. This group went 30,000 feet, broader topic. This group went very specific. Here's what it is in my life, right? That's gonna create that sense of belonging or not, or a sense of disconnect. And there are a couple of instances, I like to just share from my own personal experience. This year, one of the things that I shared with my leadership council as a welcome gift for them to serve and thank them in advance for their time, they had realtor branded shoes. And shoe size came up on this side, right? And it resonated with me as soon as you said it. Their welcome gift was shoes. And I had all of that go back to the staff, and the staff person compiled the list and made the shoe order. Well, then one day I get a call from her, and she says, hey, one of our leadership council members actually wears 2 different size shoes. What do you want to do? Do you want to offer something different, or do we order 2 pairs of shoes? So, those, show of hands, you order and offer that person something different. Okay? Show of hands, you order just 2 pairs of shoes. Yeah. So I went with ordering 2 pairs of shoes, right? The cost is not going to be impacted if it's going to impact that person's sense of belonging. Does that make sense? Those are the things where we have to be able to pivot to understand that as soon as we start to treat someone, a group of individuals, differently because of a difference that they have, we have now excluded them from that community or that culture that we're trying to create, where we're saying, in the Realtor Association, everyone's welcome. We want all of the volunteers that we can. All of our members can come and volunteer, except fill in the blank, right? Because they don't feel like they have a sense of belonging in that space. So when we're looking at opportunities and membership engagement, and we talked a little bit about membership engagement during the panel discussion, it's making sure that we are aware of those opportunities for us to make our members feel special, and not special on an island by themselves. It's special as they are, and they can show up and still have an active role in the association. There are a couple of things that are top of mind for me when I'm looking at encouraging volunteers to come forward. One big thing that has been brought to my attention that I've never paid a lot of attention to or placed emphasis on, but I will now moving forward because we're looking at the growth, right? How much more can we grow? Different learning styles. One thing that the pandemic has done, and thank you to our folks that are chiming in virtually, one thing that the pandemic has done has really eliminated some of our learning modalities. So we know there's 3 learning modalities. You can be a visual learner, you can be an auditory learner, or a kinesthetic learner. When you're chiming in or attending a virtual session, you've now eliminated that opportunity to have the kinesthetic learning style engaged, and most people are kinesthetic learners. I'm a kinesthetic learner. I wish and I pray and I try to manifest it that I was an auditory learner. I'm not. I have to see the person that's talking, I have to process what they're saying, and then I take notes about what's going on. When I'm doing that virtually, let's just be honest, usually there's multitasking that's happening. I attend many of virtual meetings from my car, so I'm now driving and attending a meeting at the same time. I'm probably retaining less information in those opportunities than I would if I just sat down in a space. And that's not to say that we do away with the virtual learning option. It's that we make adjustments. How can we incorporate the kinesthetic learning modality when we're offering those virtual learning styles? There is a manual or there is a handout, even if it's just a handout that says notes for this session on this date, thank you for attending, they can print it and write on it so that they can engage with their kinesthetic learning style. So we want to make sure that we're still creating those opportunities to have membership engagement. If you're looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion from the standpoint of just including it in your organization, a lot of associations go strictly to or directly to, well, we're just gonna start a committee and get started with diversity and inclusion. For the associations that have a committee, a DEI committee, or something of that focuses on that area, could you raise your hand? Okay. And what are the associations that have a task group that's currently in place? Okay, a couple of hands. Those that have a committee, did you start with a task group? Yes, no, some yeses and some nos. What you want to make sure that you're doing is not jumping into the deep end of the pool. You don't need to start with a committee. It can be a focus group. It can be a leadership retreat for your leadership council to understand, why are we focusing on this? How are we going to add value to our membership if we are to initiate a DEI program? And then you roll it into a task group that has one mission. By the end of the year, they're going to accomplish X, Y, and Z. And then once you have the buy-in, the understanding, and the identified value, create a committee around that. There's also an opportunity to just create a work group. It might be a one-off. You may just create a work group that focuses on 1 or 2 initiatives for the association throughout the year, and that's their intention the entire year, and it goes no further than that. And a lot of agents, I think I was chatting with someone, Warren in the hallway, Warren and I were chatting, we have so many distractions in our industry. If you are able to get a volunteer that can give you a couple meetings a year, and they know that they have 1 objective or 2 tasks that they need to complete by the end of the year, you're probably going to get the best version of that individual and a very successful product as a result of it. Find those opportunities to just create that work group that can focus just on that initiative. And then last but not least, collaborating. You can collaborate with other individuals, other affiliate associations, universities, colleges, corporations. When you're looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion, you don't have to recreate the wheel. There are a ton of resources that are out there and individuals that are happy to partner with the Realtor Association. So that's what we're looking at when we're looking at opportunities for creating opportunities and having additional membership engagement. Any questions on that? Any ahas from the exercise? I didn't offer that opportunity. Yes, there's an aha in the back? Yes. Do you want to share it? Or you're just processing? Perfect. Then that's my job here is done. As long as I've left you with something to marinate on when you're traveling home. This is a key piece. Danielle, go right ahead. Oh, there's an aha here.
Hi, it's me again. Sorry, everyone.
You're good.
So we have a committee, but the struggle is everyone knows that we should be doing things, but then our committee members aren't really coming up with anything. So the stress is on the staff.
Is it okay if we dive into that for a moment?
Yeah, that never happens for
Could
any
you
of
stand?
us, right?
Could you get her the microphone, Danielle? We're going to dive into this. Could you stand for us too?
Oh, great.
Or just for me? It's for me.
Eye contact wasn't enough. I got
It
you.
is. It's a thing. It's a thing.
right.
So you started off by saying everyone knows we're supposed to be doing things.
Yes.
Elaborate. What is the mission of that committee?
So to be honest, I'm new to the whole kind of thing, but I've
Yes.
sat in on one meeting. So there is a lot of, we know that we need to be more inclusive. We know that we should be really kind of getting our more minority groups more involved. But then it kind of just stayed there. And I asked my CEO, I said, so what kind of initiatives have you done before? Well, there's a minority scholarship. Oh, well, how did that happen? Well, technically it's already launched, but it never really followed through because committee member XYZ, the idea wasn't fully formed, or, things like that. Okay, where are we headed next? Oh, we're not really sure because they're not really bringing ideas to the table. So that's kind of where we're at.
Got it. That's perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so anyone else, can you relate to this? Okay, beautiful. There are a couple of things that I want to touch on. One is that you have the scholarship. When I hear the scholarship, I hear this is an important priority for us. Let's write a check and call it good. Check the box, right? It's a check the box at that moment. And no offense, this is not directly attacking the association. I love my associations. It's a check the box. And when you cut the check, that also brings the other side of that. If diversity, equity, and inclusion is a priority in terms of the work that the association is doing, it should be in the budget as well, right? If there's no budgetary dollars to support the initiative, there's only so much work that you're going to be able to do and impact that you're going to have. And quite honestly, it falls back on the shoulders of the individuals in this room, right? You'll have to do all of the heavy lifting. It's hard to get membership engagement if you don't have dollars to support an initiative or a program that they can actually follow through and help in following through for the association. The second piece of that is going back to what we started with, the organizational value. And I would challenge, if for those that can resonate with the story that's shared, if you have a committee that's kind of struggling to figure out what their focus is, I would challenge the DEI committee itself to create a strategic plan, a 3 to 5 year strategic plan. Why are you there? What is the value that you want to bring to the membership? And how are you going to get it done? Because we can throw a dart at the wall to say, okay, well, let's start a scholarship. Maybe the scholarship will do it, and then our underrepresented communities will feel represented. All 35 plus of them, right? Everyone feels like they're included at that point because the scholarship exists. Is that going to be the solution? Probably not. Maybe it will, but more than likely no. So figure out, what is it that we want to provide of value to the membership? The struggles that we have in the association in terms of figuring out DEI, what do we do with it? What are we going to offer? Your members have the exact same struggle. They have the exact same charge. They should be creating an inclusive business practice as well. So maybe your first task, instead of having a scholarship or sponsoring a parade or hosting a holiday event, is creating a diversity, equity, inclusion blueprint for agents to make sure that they're running an inclusive business practice. NAR has a ton of resources for that. It already exists. Pull the resources that we have from the National Association, brand it for your association, and make it yours so that your members have the tools that they need. They see value in that. You've just made my job easier because I can let my clients know, I can let the general public know that I do have an inclusive business practice because of X, Y, and Z that you've just created. And that's including not just protected classes. That's looking at your business practices. For practitioners, I always challenge them in terms of who do they want to work with. And I share a horror story that I went through a few years ago. Our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee hosted a diversity panel discussion at the local level. And we had 5 presenters come in to share. We had a representative from ARIA, NAGLRAP, NARAB, and the Colorado Coalition for People with Disabilities, and NAREP. Setup was similar to this. And Spencer, no offense. Great setup. I love this. This is fabulous. Our individual that came in to speak from the Colorado Coalition for People with Disabilities used a wheelchair. As you can see, there's no ramp on this stage. What is the process that the association has in place should a speaker utilize a wheelchair? And it's not that you need to stop everything and tear it all apart, just create the process. It's not that we don't want to be inclusive of people that use wheelchairs to come and be speakers for us, but we don't have a practice in place. We don't have a policy that's in place. Quickly, staff and I got together. They were able to go to the store and purchase a ramp to get the ramp for the individual to get access to the stage. But these are the things. I have an inclusive business practice, I say. I will work with anyone that's ready, willing, and able to purchase real estate. Same gentleman in his presentation said, I just recently bought a house. Who in the room would be able to help me? And in typical realtor fashion, every hand went up. I am still recovering from the fact that we didn't have a ramp on the stage or to access the stage. And so I sat on my hands in the back of the room and I said, I drive a 2-door coupe. There's no way that I'd be able to help him. It's not that I didn't want to help him. I didn't have a process in place. So sitting through his presentation, I quickly adapted and I said, I need to understand that if I have someone that utilizes a wheelchair, we can't take my car. They could drive. I'm the passenger for their car, and then we can continue shopping for houses, right? So it's not that we don't want to work with individuals, but in our lack of process that we have, we do not create that sense of belonging. Does that make sense? Because we don't have the process, individuals don't feel like they belong in the industry, in the association, as a buyer, as a traditional buyer, right? I hope that helps. Scholarship may be great, add on to it, figure out why, and then bring that into the strategic plan. That would be my biggest recommendation. Any other questions? That was a great question. All right, great. And thank you for letting me sidebar on that. I think the other piece that's important is making sure that our initiatives, the value that we bring to the table, is going to couple with the awareness that we work to cultivate with our membership and the perception that the membership already has, right? And that's where that brand comes in. When the work that you're doing in terms of the branding for the association is really where all three of those intersect. So you wanna make sure that you have no control over the perception that we have of the association, but as you build awareness, as you build the messaging, then that way we can really work to make sure that the branding is in place and satisfies all of those. When we're talking about establishing awareness, understanding and sharing DEI concepts with membership. So I just shared a couple of those with you. You know, do you have a process or a plan in place for working with someone that speaks a different language, that may utilize a wheelchair, that has a different learning ability? And when I say different learning ability, if you have someone that has been diagnosed with dyslexia and you present a 16-page contract to them, which is what we have in Colorado, a 16-page contract to them, are you simply just providing that to them, or are you asking them, do you have a different way of operating, or that I need to present this to you so that you can understand that? Same is true for our realtor members. Great, I'm so glad that you want to volunteer. Go online and fill out the 15-page application that will take you through the process, right? Again, we're not adapting to those different learning styles. So be aware of those learning concepts and then sharing that with your membership and sharing that with your leadership. Ongoing education is a big piece, and I'm going to let you know that's probably the one that you're going to receive the most pushback from, the membership. I wish that wasn't the case. Unfortunately, it is. Like I said, I have the opportunity to share diversity, equity, and inclusion training across the country, different formats, so this is customized specifically for you all. But I walk into many rooms, and I have someone that will approach me at least once every time I do a presentation. I have the At Home with Diversity designation, I've done Fairhaven, I've done the Override course. What are you gonna do today? What else is there to talk about? We need to, again, go back and paint the message. What is it that they need to know, and how is it going to impact their bottom line? We discussed that on the panel. There is constant learning that's going to take place. Where I work in this space and I think, oh yes, I have this inclusive practice. The diversity committee is hosting an event and we forgot to install the ramp for the person that uses a wheelchair, right? It just needs to be top of mind so that we can think about it. Ongoing education from that respect. And then creating processes that address unconscious bias. And this happens, I think, quite a bit in the association. It absolutely happens in the practitioner's book of business as well. But when we're looking at these unconscious biases, we will naturally, just the way that the brain is programmed, be attracted to and feel more comfortable working with individuals that are similar to us. The fact that we have 35 differences at this table here, that makes it challenging for an individual to think, okay, we're going to bring them in to volunteer, but we are going to need to make sure that we're inclusive in 35 different respects. We don't think about that because our unconscious brain is telling us, well, if so-and-so comes to the table, if Natalie comes to the table, we need to make sure that we have a ladies' room now, right? Maybe we were meeting in a place that only had a men's room. Piper mentioned the perception that the association is deemed as a good old boys club. Where are you hosting meetings? Is it conducive to individuals of different abilities? Thinking about that piece of it and making sure that as you take yourself through processes that you're taking yourself through a standardized checklist every single time. I'm a broken record when it comes to standardized checklists. Just make it a checklist. The other piece on that, in terms of our unconscious biases, the example that I mentioned in terms of the holiday party. We are sugarcoating a Christmas party and just labeling it holiday party, hoping that it makes people feel comfortable. It's an unconscious bias. Do a gut check with yourself within the association and take a look at that, what that looks like and feels like. And then ultimately, it helps in weaving together that sense of belonging for the association. Because we do want other individuals to feel that they have a place in the association. We definitely need their voice because we are all realtors, right? No different. Every volunteer is a volunteer at the same level. Some are just raving fans and others are not. So we want to bring those other ones into the fold. When I share diversity, equity, and inclusion education with realtors, I often reference the One America principle. Is anyone familiar with the One America principle? Okay, yes, a couple of hands, beautiful. So the One America principle was actually an initiative that came out during the Clinton administration, and it came out of a partnership between the Realtor Association and HUD, and we came out with these principles that realtors have at their disposal. So 2 tips. Since a lot of hands did not go up on this, sharing the One America principle with your members to let them know that it is a tool and resource that is available to them. oneamerica.net is the website. You can pull it down. But in looking at the One America principle, I think a lot of these apply to the association as well. I welcome you and want to do business with you. Do all of your members feel that sentiment? Yeah. I will base my decision and opinions of you and who you are not on any preconceived stereotypes or ingrained value judgment. No, I'm getting a lot of no's already. I subscribe to the Federal Fair Housing Act and its principles. Do they understand that we have code of ethics and we have fair housing that we adhere to as an association and collectively overseeing that piece of it? I'm hoping that's a yes. That one should be a yes. That's our strong suit. I embrace and celebrate the strength of diversity that diversity brings to our communities and our nation. And again, this is just looking at how you, as an association, is showing up every day for your members. These are more housing related. I'll help you find a home. I'll market your home ownership. I'll make sure that you have a full range of housing options. But the next one, I'll make every effort so that we can communicate with each other. If we do not share a common language, I will work to find someone who can interpret. Anyone that has members that have English as a second language or even a third language, what are the initiatives or efforts that are spent there in terms of making those individuals feel comfortable? I've had many conversations with realtor members that don't actively volunteer for the association because of the accent that they have. They feel that as soon as they walk into the room and they start to speak, that those stereotypes are popping up. And we know if you haven't taken the bias override course or offered it at your association, I would recommend that you take that. But we know that the cognitive dissonance that happens when a person walks into a room and feels that they're going to be judged in that moment, they cannot focus on the committee work. They can't focus on the strategic planning. They can't focus on the conversation that they're having at that moment because they think that you are thinking whatever stereotype they believe to be true in that time, right? So we need to think about that when we're looking at the language of other people's or if other people use and if it's a common language. And can you bring someone in to interpret if needed? I've incorporated these principles into my daily operation and my overall business plan. If an outsider looking in were to look at your association's business plan or strategic plan for the next couple of years, is it clear that inclusivity is a focus for the association? And could you pinpoint that for them? Question, we have a question here. Could I get a microphone right there? You're good. You're great.
So we had a first-time home buyers thing in April. It was brought to by our DEI committee. and we received a lot of positive feedback. But on our social media, we received some, and not our members, it was other sister association realtor members, but they had a lot to say about DEI. And it's hard for me, because it was recommended that I just delete it and block her, but I thought it was a good opportunity to stand my ground and to say that this is not, she said that not all realtors are on the DEI train, not everyone is, I'm all for diversity, but I'm not for the equity part. So I thought that was a good opportunity to stand up for other culture, but I was pretty much told no and to block it. Don't have a back and forth on our socials. But I guess what I'm trying to say to you, I didn't really know how to handle that situation, because to me it's not political, it's cultural, like you said. Like, this is all about inclusivity. I mean, so I didn't really know how to handle that situation.
Yeah, that's a great question. And whether you delete, you respond to, you turn it into an opportunity to meet up to the association and the leadership of the association, right? For me, I welcome those conversations. As I said, when we started out just setting the groundwork, we're going to enter a conversation from curiosity and respect. And oftentimes, if someone is completely pushing against the concept of diversity, equity, inclusion, I don't know anyone that would go against the concept of creating a sense of belonging. But typically, we see a lot of pushback in terms of the equity piece and the diversity piece, right? Let's deny that diversity is even something that we need to address within our association, within our community. I think having those one-on-one conversations is key. It is also helpful when you look at the business principles, right? So if it's, it's great that you guys are offering this class, you've checked the box, because that's the feeling that comment, I haven't seen the comment, but I'm assuming it's just a good for you, pat on the back, you have a committee, you did a class, check the box. It's ingrained in who we are, right? So I think that's a great opportunity to send a message to that member, even if they're not your realtor member, because the conversation and discussion may have ended in that thread. It's not going to end at the networking events, the happy hours, when other people join their brokerage and say, I think I'm going to volunteer at XYZ Association. If that person has their ear, it is, you don't want to volunteer there. They talk about diversity, but there's no action to support it. So having that one-on-one conversation to say, I understand how you feel. Please understand that this is the business model for the association and what we're striving towards. It's progress, not perfection. I don't expect anyone in this room to be perfect. I know that I do a tremendous amount of work in this space. I'm not perfect, and I'm constantly learning every day. So keeping that in mind for them as well, and then I would create those as opportunities for engagement. Do you mind coming in, because I'd love to show you our strat plan and where we're focused, and clearly we're missing something. So I'd love to hear from our members. How can we improve that? Great question. Challenging, but great. Question here in the front.
So our DEI committee is under a year old, and I'm from an area that is not the most diverse place as it is, and it's getting better. And I kind of have two questions. How do you get people to care about DEI? Because it does affect everybody, but there are members that think it doesn't affect them. And then my kind of second part of that question is, when you do step up and when you do try to explain why it's important, sometimes people my age are met with, oh, you're being sensitive, it's just a joke, why are snowflake. So how do you handle that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the second part of your question is really on a personal, that's a hard one, to get to a place where that's not triggering, because it is, right? It kind of invalidates your beliefs, your thoughts, and how you're showing up. For me, it takes a lot to get me to that point. And I think that's just from having multiple conversations in places. When you have the members that don't believe that it's a concern or an issue or it should be a focus area for your local association or your state association, you have stories within your association that I would recommend that you plug into and ask for permission to share. I've had one of the early stories that I received permission to share was from a member that attended a networking, so it was networking and education. So pre-event was networking, and then there was an education offering that followed. And she was talking to a group of other women, so 3 women standing in the group. A well-respected, seasoned practitioner, seasoned realtor in the industry, leader in the organization, made a comment to another realtor member, look, the lesbians are here. These are the conversations, these are the stories that you share, right? That volunteer, not coming back anymore. And the thing that triggered that is because they all had this particular lady just went through getting a shorter haircut, and she was put into the lesbians are here. And this is coming from leadership of an organization, right? These are the stories that we need to get permission to share so that we can bring it to the forefront. You can share my story, but what I've noticed is that members want to see it's happening here in our association, right? That's a great story, but that's NAR, that's on the national level. That happens fill in the state. It doesn't happen here. There are stories within your community. So the more that you create a safe space within your diversity and inclusion committee, and not that it becomes a sounding board for all things negative that's happening, right? Those are more sidebar conversations. Talk to us. Can we incorporate that in some type of training or messaging so that we can deliver that to our members? Because those members that experience it, those ladies that hear the lesbians are here, you've just lost 3 volunteers, and they were solid volunteers because of one derogatory statement that was made at a networking event. I think there's a hand in the back.
Yeah, so I wanted to take a positive note. Our Diversity and Equity Inclusion Committee started a Realtor Story series. So we opened up the floor to whoever was comfortable to sit down with me and do kind of a testimony as to who they are, why they became a realtor, what they believe in as a realtor, what they work for, kind of a open, tell their story. And it was a little slow at first, but we have started receiving submissions and nominations, and it's been a really easy but low cost, but also really impactful way for members who don't necessarily always feel like they have a voice to have a voice. And we have a variety of managers and team leads and brokers and new agents. So it's been really great. So I do encourage, if you are struggling, this is a really great way to also invite new people to be active in a different way, because we really have seen some great feedback from that. So just a positive note.
Round of applause for that. That's fabulous. Thank you.
And Natalie, I actually had a question,
Yes.
if you don't mind. And it's a progress over perfection question. From your perspective as an agent, I'm going to share a story. I was talking to a Black woman who is also the office manager for its KW office in Austin in an affluent white area. And she just told me, she said, look, systemic racism, it's a real thing. And so I don't put my picture on my business cards or in my email signature because it gets me more business. It's sad, but it's true. And then as another example, we all know, we've seen reports, studies that have been done, really important work that show that if you are a person of color and you have, say, pictures of your family in your home and you come to have an appraisal, it's something like 30% that the home appraises lower than one that would have pictures of a white family, as an example. So my question for you is this. There's a conundrum there of, as an agent, it's your job to get the highest and best offer for your client, but we also, as realtors, are called to be agents of change in that. How do you walk that weird divide of helping to explain, like, we live in a world with systemic racism and you probably need to take your pictures down, versus, no, we're going to draw a line and try to have a better America?
Beautiful question. And again, I said I would be a broken record with this. It's a process. If you are going to provide tools to your agents of, you can talk to your clients and let them know that they should probably depersonalize the house, which is a conversation that I have on the front end anyway, right? I always talk about depersonalizing the house, taking down all of the personal photos. It's not a conversation that I only have with my clients of color. It's a conversation that I have with everyone. It has to be a process. I think and when we talk about the marketing and branding, I think that can open up a whole nother can of worms, because I've never marketed on what are those called? Bus benches or billboards or things like that. That's not part of my marketing campaign. I do have my photo on my business card, but sometimes I'm concerned about that from a safety standpoint, right? So I think there are so many elements that you want to incorporate, but if you're setting us up for truly change, because we are an industry that has 1.5 million independent contractors, so there are 1.52 million ways of doing things, just so you know, right? So no two people are doing it the same, creating more systems and processes. That's our weakness. When we can stand firm in, no, I tell every one of my clients that they need to pull personal photos down so that the home shows well, and here's the reality, buyers need to see their things in the space. So you're decluttering, depersonalizing so other people can see things in that space. And it's not just family photos. The conversation goes to religious relics that may be around the house, books that are on the bookshelf. I've seen many of deals go sideways because of the library in the house. Yeah, these are the things. It's a process though. I need you to depersonalize your house so that we can get the greatest exposure for your home, and this is to serve your bottom line. Not every client will do it, and that's their choice. Right? And the impact of that, unfortunately, if they have a negative appraisal, things of that nature, then we have to navigate through that independently. But create a process that's repeatable that you do every single time. Fabulous. Great question. Okay. And we're at time. So I will just go through these quickly. So One America principles, I want to get you guys out of here on time, especially I'm the only thing that stands between you and getting home. I'm here to meet your real estate needs because you're the reason that I'm in business. That applies to the association as well when we're looking at our realtor members. And then let me know about any cultural or special needs that you have in this business relationship so that it's comfortable and successful. If we start our conversations with our volunteer members from the standpoint of most of the One America principles, you're already setting yourself strides ahead of any other association or brokerage from that matter. And again, this is a tool that's available to realtor members everywhere. I've got a couple of other slides. I'm going to just go through them quickly. You'll get the slide deck. When we're looking at creating an inclusive culture, looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion, and making sure that it's part of your new agent training when they're coming on board. Not that it is a designation or a class that you can take or in 2025 a requirement that you need to satisfy. This is who we are. We're going to incorporate that in the training. Promoting NAR resources and training tools that they have. NAR has quite a few training tools. I want to say it's nar.realtor/diversity if I'm not mistaken, that you can pull down. And that could include the Fairhaven simulation, At Home with Diversity, the Bias Override course, the online Bias Override course, and the training toolkits that they have already housed online for us. And then ongoing training for staff and for your volunteers, right? So we're looking at volunteer leadership training when we look at all of those classes. What does the front desk receptionist at your office, how much training have they received in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion? Because they are the first face that meets every member that walks through that door. And is there a difference in treatment that your members are receiving because the front desk receptionist may have biases that she hasn't received training on how to address and processes implemented to address them? And then fostering inclusive leadership. You want to make sure that you're empowering and amplifying those diverse voices, so you're creating an environment that those voices are welcome. You're extending the invitation. A great deal of this just comes down to the ask. Make sure that you do the ask. And then having curiosity and respect in the conversations that you're having. If you have a volunteer leader or a few potential volunteer leader that says that they are challenged in volunteering in a leadership capacity for the association because of fill in X, and if it's a treatment of an underserved community, have a conversation with them to learn how can we adapt and adjust that to make sure that you feel included and have that sense of belonging, and you too can extend your invitation to your circle of peers so that we can grow our leadership moving forward. I've mentioned the investment in DEI education and then leading by example. Again, if you have the education and the training for your volunteer leadership, if you have the conversation letting them know that their own unconscious biases don't have a place in the association because we have this process and this protocol in place, you're now leading by example. You're setting up your volunteer leaders for success. And then inclusive messaging and branding, making sure that you reflect diversity in your branding and visuals. Do a quick audit of your social media. Scroll through. Don't stop and read the post. Just scroll through the photos. What do they look like? Who's represented? Better question, who's not represented? And it's a huge gut check for yourself that you can just check in. Collaborate with collaboration opportunities and community partners that you can connect with. Making sure that you have inclusive language in your messaging in addition to your policies and procedures. And then doing a brand audit, right? So you can have a focus group, individuals that come in, your members, pull a couple, let's say 20, 30, 50 members and ask them, tell us about our social media presence. How do you feel? Does it create a message or a feel of inclusivity when you take a look at it so that they can explore that and giving you candid feedback? Again, it's progress, not perfection. We want to make sure that we're continuing to grow as we're growing the association. NAR does have a diversity and inclusion statement. You have that at your disposal. So if you don't have one at the local or state level, you can always just direct your statement to the NAR statement because it's done for you. And I like that one because we know that it's gone past the legal team, right? So it's good to go. I am gonna leave you with one short video. I know that we're 5 over. If you have to go, I'm not offended, and then we'll wrap up in about 3 minutes.
You know that little voice in your head? The one that tells you to ignore a tasteless joke.
The one that tells you to keep quiet when a client makes a racist comment.
The little voice that tells you you're not smart enough because English isn't your first language.
Or that it's okay to judge someone for leaving early because they have family commitments.
The one that tells you not to say anything when others are being reduced to stereotypes.
Or that it's not a big deal when everyone's opinion isn't considered.
You may think you're the only one that hears that voice, but that voice also speaks to other people. It says,
You're different.
You're an outsider.
You lack commitment.
Your opinion doesn't matter.
instead of listening to that little voice, you need to find yours and make it heard. It's time for all of us to speak up. Because when we change the dialogue, we can change our world.
So it's, oh, yeah. It starts with us, right? We, as you mentioned, we're the voice for this industry. We're the leaders in this industry. So if we know and we want to see that change in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion and create a tremendous space that has that sense of belonging, it starts here. So thank you for all of the work that you're doing. Thank you for having me. Enjoy your travel home.